No period.
Well, I have one complaint. That was, when Brennan invited me to the inaugural conference of Rocks in '91. I was at that time still considering whether I would go to UCLA or come to Rocks. And so the inaugural conference was held February or something like that. It was extremely cold, and there wasn't really a lot of snow. There was some snow and ice, and I you know, my sort of then British way of talking about the weather, I said, oh, you know, it's sort of bitterly cold today, these things. And Zena said, don't worry, this place doesn't get a lot of snow. Well, the next 2 or 3 years after I moved to New Jersey, they turned in record winters, months of snow. I never seen so much snow in all my life. I saw a little family video the other day. They just had them digitized. It was only like 4 feet of snow unnoticed. And I remember digging a trench through this, and it suddenly occurred to me, of course, Zion's Canadian.
All that snow?
Yeah.
You came anyway and you're glad.
Well, I would make one other observation that I think we've heard a lot of discussions of Zenon's eminence with regard to his awards and the positions that he's held. There's one little thing that happened when I first arrived at graduate school that really drove home the point of how eminent Zenon really is. You know, when you start out in your career and other scientists begin citing your work, one gets very excited at that time. You're like, oh, someone actually cited my paper. And shortly after I had arrived at Rutgers, I had encountered this paper where Zenon was cited, but not in the references section of the paper, in the title of the paper. And it turned out it was one of a increasingly popular subgenre of papers that had said something blah 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 colon why Fodor and Polishin were horribly dangerously wrong and have hurt the field of cognitive science for decades to come. And I believe this particular paper was by a young philosopher no one had heard of named David Chalmers. And I read the paper and I was like, wow, this is exciting, and he's like directly engaging with Zenon stuff, and it's been out for a year now. And so I went to Zenon and I said, so I'd love to talk about what you thought about this, because this was very exciting. And he said, oh yeah, I saw that. I haven't read that yet. And I thought that is the height of eminence. Not only is he sort of floating above, caring about who cites his work after so many thousands of citations, but he is so far above it, he doesn't even have the bandwidth to read papers where he's in the title. Someday.
I know that Rochelle and I were very grateful for the flourishing state of Rutgers we took over from Zenon. He had done a fantastic job of establishing one of the preeminent centers for cognitive science. And unlike us, he had succeeded in getting grants. Grants for the center itself. We tried.
The times have changed.
Zenon was great not only for the center itself, but for many multiple working groups within the center. I see Susan sitting in the front row, and I remember the first time that I met Susan was in the context of, I believe it was Zenon who threw this all together. He called it the object group.
Yeah, except that what you forgot is that you're the one that organized it.
Is that true?
Yes.
Well, that is the mark of a fantastic administrator who can make one think that he organized it. Really, he made me do it? That's amazing. But that was such a wonderful opportunity. I felt I met half of the East Coast's important cognitive scientists just as part of Zen suggesting, or maybe making me suggest that these people get into the same room at the same time. And I recall those meetings very fondly. I remember thinking at certain moments there that suddenly the epicenter of the whole field had moved to that particular discussion.
I want to follow up on Randy. Ernie got it into his head that somehow he could get the two of us to leave UCLA and come here. And he did it by having us hang around. He arranged for us to be here a couple of times. And when we finally decided we were going to come, people did the following. You left the University of Pennsylvania to go to UCLA, and now you're going to go to Rutgers? And why are you going to do that? And it turned out, the reason we decided to do it is when you're working so hard, it's really nice to have fun. And our answer was, it was the most fun intellectual place to be. And so we came. And we were able to bring Lila to somehow, make things go. And there were lots of wonderful joint seminars with Zen and Jerry and other people, all yelling at each other, but nobody giving an itch.
I remember one time explicitly, very shortly after I arrived, Jerry would give these talks and would be sort of like pontificating, but Zenon would have none of it and would just be like, no, that seems completely wrong. And I had never seen people argue like this in an academic context before. And I remember Zenon got Jerry so upset that I think it was Karen Stromswald said sort of from the corner of the room, should we call an ambulance? And Jerry was like jumping and pounding his head.
Speaking of people yelling at one another in discussion, when I moved to Rutgers, of course, part of the philosophy is, I knew that as far as the Rux connection was concerned, I would be dealing in part with people with whom I disagreed and who would surely disagree with me, or who I knew disagreed with me. And so there was the question of how that was going to work out. But to my pleasure, especially Zenon was always most gentlemanly, no matter how severe the disagreements were. I don't think they were always so severe, but even when they were, he was always a pleasure.
I don't know where you got these ideas that I'm so laid back.
What he's trying to say is he completely disagrees with that character.
Or it could be the Canadian grumpy is different from the unrecognizable.
Okay, before we thank Zenon one final time, I believe that Gretchen Chapman will offer some closing remarks.
The
for the
staff
meeting.
are looking in angrily, I don't know
Yes.
why.
Yes.
Not a director anymore.
While Gretchen calls them in, let me say who this person is. This is Gretchen Chapman. She is a professor of psychology. I believe she has also served in the past as the chair of the Department of Psychology here. She has been the president of the Society for Judgment and Decision Making, and she does lots of research on decision making. Her work is completely strange and inexplicable to me. Instead of studying little dots move around the screen, which is what psychologists are supposed to do, she does research on decision making in contexts like health and medicine, where she makes a real difference to people's lives there on the ground. With Ernie Lepore, she has served and maybe is serving as either the co-interim director or the interim co-director. I'm not quite sure.
Work together in some form.
Some form of that, of the Center for Cognitive Science.
Thanks. Okay, so I get to close this out and thank you all for being here. And so the first thing I want to do is shout out to the people who made this day possible. So the biggest people who made today possible are Sue Cosentino and Joanne Belli. Chris Cortev is also over here doing our photography, and Rodney's with our computer support. I think he's not here anymore, but they were also instrumental in putting the day together. Ernie Lepore, the other co-director of RUX, is sitting up here. He's another one of the organizers. And of course, thanks to all of you for being here. Some of you traveled a great distance to be here, so we really appreciate everyone who came out to help celebrate Zenon. And of course, we are most appreciative to Zenon for giving us an opportunity to celebrate. When I first came to Rutgers as an assistant professor, I didn't know anything about Rutgers. I didn't know anything about psychology at Rutgers or cognitive science at Rutgers, but I knew who Zenon Polishin was. And I was like, damn, if Rutgers has Zenon Polishin, this must be some good state university that I'm coming to.
Thank you very much. I can afford to add to your thanking people my thanks, because this is an effort beyond your job description for Susan and Joanne. So I'm really grateful for having done this.
Good, I was about to ask you if you would make a speech and then.
I want to thank all the people who came here too, especially my students who traveled some distance away. I'm really moved by all of this. I want to tell you that. I didn't think I would be, but I am. It reminds me of some good times that we had.
This might be the most Canadians we've had in one group.